Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures, Daily Dose of Nature. I'm your host, Sunny Vanderstar. Today's topic is Season Highlights, India Tiger Quest, and it will be presented by our fabulous Nat Hab expedition leader, Aditya Panda. Aditya, welcome back from the field. We're so excited to have you today, and we can't wait to hear your stories and see your incredible images. So let's get started.
Thank you, Sunny. Hello, everyone. It's so nice to be back after a long time. As most of you would be knowing, I have been busy in the field, and that's the reason why you haven't been seeing much of me here. But now the India safari season is drawing to a close. In fact, as I speak, my friend and colleague Harsha, who you might have known through trips and webinars, is leading the last India Tiger Quest trip of the season, and then it'll be a wrap until winter. While that means that, sad part of that is that we'll not be in the field so much for the next few months. But the good part is that you'll be seeing a lot of us presenting here on Daily Dose of Nature. For those of you who are watching my webinar for the first time or who haven't traveled with me in the past, my name is Aditya Panda, and I've been leading Nat Hab expeditions in India since 2016. And I primarily lead the Grand India Wildlife Adventure, India Tiger Quest, and India Tiger Safari, which is our Photo Pro version of India Tiger Quest. I guide in tiger and elephant landscapes, and when I'm not doing that, I work for conservation in tiger and elephant landscapes in India. So let's get started. India Tiger Quest, for those of you who do not know, is a tiger-focused itinerary that Nat Hab runs in India. It is a trip that runs through the summer from April through June, and it takes us to a fabulous tiger reserve in northwestern India called Ranthambore. And on this trip, we spend a week in Ranthambore, which also happens to be the hottest and driest tiger habitat in the world. And we visit it in the hottest and driest time of the year, which ensures fabulous sightings most of the time. And that's because the dry deciduous forest and scrub forest of that area has excellent visibility in the hot and dry season. Water is limited and animals concentrate around water, making it much easier for us to see tigers at that time of the year than at other times of the year. And this picture here is from one of my trips this season. The summer of 2023 has been one of the most exciting India Tiger Quest seasons ever, even if I say so myself. Certainly, as far as my trips are concerned, we've had some phenomenal sightings, and I'll be telling you more about those in the course of today's webinar. And I believe all, if not, every one of my colleagues who leads this trip has had equally good sightings through this season. Let's start with some of my non-tiger sightings, and then I'll get to the most exciting tiger sightings we've had this season. Yes, I know this is not a leopard, this is a tiger, and a lot of you must have seen this picture of mine in past webinars. Ranthambore, as you know, is a tiger reserve that is spread around an ancient fort, and there are many beautiful monuments in the reserve, from the medieval period, from the period of the Maharajas, which were the feudal kings of medieval India. And Ranthambore actually used to be the private hunting reserve of the Maharaja of a place called Jaipur, which is quite famous for its palaces. And in this former hunting reserve, the Maharajas used to have their hunting palaces where they would stay when they were going out on hunts. And these palaces, although they have been taken over by wilderness and wildlife now, continue to remain protected monuments. And occasionally, very rarely, for the lucky few, uh, we sometimes get to see tigers hanging out in these palaces and monuments, especially in the hot season, because they're nice and cool and well ventilated. They were built for the weather. Their architecture was designed to keep the interiors cool, and the tigers have found that out. And you will see a lot of pictures online. If you look up Ranthambore, you will see a lot of pictures of tigers actually hanging out in the monuments. But to the best of my knowledge and to the best of everybody's knowledge who I know, who have known Ranthambore for a very, very long time, leopards have never been seen in these monuments. Um, One of the reasons is that the part of the park in which these monuments are really high concentration tiger areas. There's really high densities of tigers in those areas, and leopards, as a rule, tend to avoid areas where you have high density of tigers, because tigers see them as competitors. Tigers are much bigger and much more powerful than leopards, and they tend to, chase and kill leopards if they find them. So it was quite a surprise when one afternoon we were parked next to, just on the backside of this monument that you see in the picture. And it was only our Jeep that was parked on that side. And besides us was a lake. And on the far bank of the lake, we were watching a tigress just laying and lounging in the tall grass on the far bank. And as we were watching this, our guide happened to turn behind and look. And then he said, "Look, look, look." And this is what we saw. There was a leopard fast asleep, perhaps totally unaware of the fact that we were parked there. And she was sleeping by a window of the monument. And very quickly and very quietly, we started our Jeep and backed up and got closer to the leopardess. And that very moment, she got up, turned around, and looked at us. And I managed to get this really quick photo of her. And then she just vanished into the monument. This monument is the old hunting palace. So what we did was we quickly drove around to the backside of the monument, and we found her initially staring out of a window, and then she went down to the ground floor, and she was just hanging out around the monument. And interestingly, throughout this season, every single time that I've been to the palace, we found the leopard. She seemed to have taken up residence there. One morning, we found her, on the top floor. There are 3 windows on the first floor of the monument that kind of look out, and she was sitting in a window. And we wondered how she managed to survive there with tigers, frequenting that area. And then I noticed that there are many tall ficus trees at the same level as the window. And we presumed that, if a tiger arrived on the scene, she could easily escape to the branches of the ficus. And on my last trip, which was in the last week of May, about 15 days ago, 10 or 15 days ago, we finally stopped seeing her at the palace. So we surmised that maybe she had a cub that she was raising in the palace. The surroundings of the palace have perennial water and plenty of prey, and it was a nice, safe place for her to raise a cub. And as soon as the cub was old enough to move with her, she probably just left the area and went up, to parts of the park where she's less likely to get killed by tigers. But that wasn't the only exciting leopard sighting that we had. we on my last trip, we had unusually high leopard sightings. In fact, on 2 consecutive mornings, we came across 2 different mating pairs of leopards. Um, in one instance, in fact, we came across a mating pair of leopards, and there was a second male that was trying to compete with the male that was mating, but which was this male. But this male kept chasing away the other male. So it was quite interesting to watch that. There were no fights. There was no growling and fighting and no bloodshed. But the second male was quite persistent, although he kept getting chased away by the first male. And that was quite something interesting to watch. On the second morning, in a different part of the park, again, we came across a different pair of mating leopards. And it was quite interesting that on both these mornings, almost as soon as we entered the park, we would come across these mating leopards, which, leopards in general are very rare to see. I usually tell my guests that for every 20 tigers that you see, you might expect to see one leopard. But it was quite interesting to have not only, 5 leopards in 2 mornings, but also this interesting behavior. And of course, they were behind a lot of vegetation, so I could not get great pictures. But here is one picture that you might enjoy. But that wasn't it was rare behavior, but it was definitely not the rarest sighting that we had. The rarest thing that we saw was this, the striped hyena. Now, what are your what are your guesses? Do you think this picture would win BBC Wildlife Photographer of the Year? I think it would top the list of rejects. But to me, it might be a terrible picture, but I've been guiding for 15 years now. I've been out in the field for 15 years, and this has been the first time that I've actually seen a striped hyena in daylight. And that just goes on to tell you how rare it is to see these animals, especially inside the park. You might see them outside the park in the surroundings of villages or in scrub areas at night, but that is not something that we usually get to do. And to see a striped hyena in daylight in the park is something super duper exciting. Of course, it was daylight, but it was getting close to sunset, and we were on our way out of the park, and I wasn't ready really for the sighting. My camera settings were messed up, and the sighting was so quick that this is just a record shot that I managed to get for showing you. Besides leopards and hyenas, we also had some fabulous sloth bear sightings throughout the season. On one occasion, in fact, we had a tiger stalking and chasing up a hillside to get to a sloth bear, but I don't have photographic evidence of that. That was a super exciting sighting. But on our very last game drive of the season, at least very last game drive of my season, we had a very nice bold male sloth bear show up towards the end of the game drive, and we managed to drive along a road that he was walking on, and very confidently he was walking like a tiger would walk, which is again fairly rare. You don't get to see sloth bears every day, and when you do, they're usually running away, or they're not the most confident animals to be watching on a game drive. But this bear was quite confident, and not only did he follow our jeep for a good distance, he even climbed up a tree right next to us. So we were practically eye level with him for quite a while, getting some excellent pictures. Look how his lower lip is long and protruding, and that helps him suck termites out of termite mounds. You can also notice that his nostrils are meant, his sort of nose also kind of protrudes over his nostrils, which is a way for him to be able to close his nostrils up when he's sucking termites, because no one wants termites in their nostrils. And they also have huge claws that resemble the claws of a sloth, which is why they're called sloth bear. And they use these claws to dig up termite mounds. So, um, I have plenty of exciting sightings that I could talk to you about, but we have limited time, which is why I shall finish my non-tiger exciting sightings with these leopards, the sloth bear, and the hyena, and get to the single most exciting sightings that we had this season. So, on a trip that I led in early May. Yes, it was early May, and it was our first game drive. When we arrive at Ranthambore, we arrive around lunchtime from Delhi on the first day, and we have lunch and then go on our first game drive, which is an afternoon drive. And we went out that afternoon, and we had a nice sighting of a big male tiger. And after that sighting, we thought that was a great start. And we drove around a bit. There was still time on our game drive. We drove around a bit and went to the lakes area in what is known as zone number 3, which is in the central part of the park, the most picturesque part of the park. And there we found this tigress called Riddhi, lounging by the far bank of the lake. In fact, this is the very same sighting that I was talking about when I was talking in context of the leopard. We were parked and watching this tigress when we noticed that leopard behind us in the palace. There were 3 jeeps in our group, as there usually are, because on India Tiger Quest we don't put more than 2 guests per jeep. That way everybody is comfortable. There's plenty of room for your cameras and gear, and it's just a great way to enjoy your game drives. So we were there parked watching the tigress, and I get asked this question a lot by my guests, especially the ones that have been on several trips to Africa, or watched a lot of National Geographic and BBC documentaries on wildlife. They always ask me, have you ever seen a tiger kill? And my answer until this trip had been that yes, we have seen tigers stalk and chase and hunt, but usually the kills happen behind dense cover. So on the rare occasion that we have actually seen a kill take place, we've never really seen the actual kill. You've seen the stalking, the chasing, and the whole hunt, but not the actual kill. The kill usually happens behind cover, and then you see the tiger dragging its kill. On many occasions, I've seen tigers carrying their kills, but very, very rarely do you actually get to see a tiger in the act of making a kill. And there are even documentaries on how difficult it is to actually film tigers actually in the act of killing. In fact, until the early 2000s, no one had ever filmed a tiger in the act of killing or photographed a tiger in the act of killing. And as it is, you see a lot of attempted kills, but most of them end up in failure, because for every 10 or 20 attempts that a tiger makes to hunt, it only succeeds really once. And your chances, therefore, of seeing an actual kill are very, very low. And there are many people who have years and years of safari experience with tigers. We've seen hundreds of tigers, thousands of tigers, but never really seen a kill happen. Anyhow, so this afternoon we were parked you know, shuttling between leopard and tigress, leopard and tigress. And, you know, we only had to drive around 500 meters, which is, you know, um, about half a kilometer to see the leopardess in the hunting palace, and then drive around it again and keep an eye on the tigress, see what she was up to. Well, she was mostly lounging when we saw her. She was fast asleep actually when we first saw her. And then when she got up and sort of sat up, we understood that there might be chances that she might wake up and walk at some point. So then we stopped going back to the leopard and, you know, parked and watched the tigress. And as you can see here, she was sitting under that palm tree, relaxed, not really concentrating or focused on anything. And then suddenly something caught her attention and she looked to her left. Before I continue with the story, my apologies for the shoddy post-processing of these pictures. I must confess that I did this in quite a hurry. You see, it's been a really short time since I finished my season. And when safari guides or expedition leaders finish their season, they have a lot of things to catch up with at home. And I haven't really had time to sit and work on my pictures. So I did, you know, the absolute taboo of using the auto mode on a lot of my pictures that I had to edit for today's webinar. I'll work on these pictures later. Maybe we can work on them together like we have done in the past on post-processing workshops. So if you would like to do that, please mention in the comment box. And if we have enough people wanting another photo post-processing workshop, we'll do that with some of my best pictures this season. Anyhow, now back to the story. So she appeared to be distracted by something and turned around and looked to her left with some focus and attention. And then she got up, not really in a hurry, you know, somewhat lazily, but still with focus and attention. She got up, and then she leapt across a channel of water, which gave me this really nice picture. I know it might not look great on a little computer screen, but imagine, you know, we are all so focused on always trying to get as close as we can to an animal when we photograph them, you know, zooming in all the way, filling the frame with it. But a lot of times, if you shoot with a shorter focal length and you include the landscape in which the animal is, it makes for a much nicer picture. But these pictures usually look best when they're printed large and put on a nice wall, you know, in a frame. So anyhow, enough digressing. So she jumped across she leapt across that channel and then started walking. There were other jeeps and safari vehicles parked on the far bank. And as she got up and started walking, we also raced around, you know, because we thought, you know, now she's going to walk, she's going to come out on the road on the other side. So let's get close to her. Let's try and get some head-on shots as she walks onto the road and get close and get some nice sightings. And yes, that's a mother crocodile that you see basking on the banks of the lake. And then we drove around, and it mustn't have taken us more than a minute to drive around. And as we arrived on the other bank, boom, this is the sight that met us. She, you know, very quietly and leisurely stalked along the along the grass on the far bank, and in that minute or less that it had taken us to get around, she had managed to hunt this spotted deer. And as we arrived, the deer was still in its last throes, and it was super duper exciting. In fact, as I mentioned, of the 3 jeeps in our group, we were the only ones on the far bank getting to see both the leopard and the tiger from where we were parked. But we had 2 of our other jeeps actually getting a ringside view of this action. And I'm going to show you a video that was taken on the phone of one of my guests. And, you know, I'll let you see what happened for yourself.
Somehow.
Pull up your volume as much as you can. So that's the prop that you saw in the picture.
If the wind is helping them. So these deer started leaving the lake area. Understand that the tiger nearby could be dangerous for their life. They leaving now, going away from the shore. Tiger coming, tiger coming, tiger coming. Tiger is coming. Oh, left side of the crocodile. See? Left of the crocodile. Tiger, 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 tiger. Pagli, pagli. Pagli, pagli. Stop, 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 stop. Wait, no. Ma'am? She's still alive, killing this dude. We saw a lion kill, which is very good. The deer's still alive.
And then she dragged her kill away into the tall grass and, you know, hid it there, lay down to catch her breath. And then, you know, as tigers often do, immediately after a kill, they, you know, it's a lot of energy, a lot of strength that's exerted in hunting, and especially in the hot weather, they get really tired by that effort. You know, it might not look like a lot of effort, but for a tiger it is. They don't have a lot of fuel efficiency. They are extremely powerful, but they run out of gas really quickly. So after she hit the kill and lay down and caught her breath, she came out for a drink and gave us this fabulous view. And, you know, believe me, for almost everyone who was present at that sighting, including really, really seasoned park guides and drivers who have spent their entire lives guiding in Ranthambore National Park, this was a first. They had never ever seen a hunt taking place like that at such close quarters, you know, with a clear view. But believe it or not, that wasn't the most exciting sighting of the season. I'll get to the most exciting story of this season right now. So this tigress that we saw now hunting the spotted deer is a tigress known as Riddhi. That's her name, Riddhi, Riddhi. And in Ranthambore, you know, you have this the central part of the park, the richest part of the park, in fact, which is known as the lakes area. There are 3 very large artificial lakes in that area, which in such a dry area, you know, that area becomes like a magnet for all kinds of wildlife. Even in the hottest of summers, driest of summers, there's always water, there's always fresh grass. There are plenty of deer, and therefore this area has traditionally always been occupied by very, very successful tigresses who have raised many successful litters of cubs in that area. And, you know, invariably each tigress, you know, through different periods of time that has occupied this area has been known as the Lady of the Lakes. And Riddhi is the present Lady of the Lakes. But before her, her mother, a tigress called Arrowhead, was the Lady of the Lakes. Now, Arrowhead had not been occupying the lakes area for quite a while, you know, for the past couple of years at least. So on again the first game drive, the first afternoon drive of my last trip, which happened in the last week of May, we were quite surprised pleasantly to find arrowhead in the lakes area. You know, the territories of tigresses often overlap. These tigresses that have territories next to each other are usually mother and daughter or sisters. So, you know, not that they really get along after they're adults, but there is still a fair amount of overlapping and a fair amount of tolerance, especially in areas where resources are not limited, like in zone 3 of Ranthambore, which has plenty of water and plenty of prey for, you know, for hunting. So it was quite nice to find arrowhead. Um, you know, I hadn't seen her in a while, so I was very happy. We were parked again and watching her, and almost in a repeat of what happened on the previous trip, again on the first game drive of the trip in the afternoon, you know, we found arrowhead lounging, and then suddenly she also got alert and started stalking. Now we were surprised because, you know, between where arrowhead was seated when we first found her and us, which is in this direction, if you know what I mean, towards us, um, there was a large herd of spotted deer. You know, they were grazing. They were separated from the tigers by water, but you know, they were aware of the tigress's presence, but they were still grazing calmly because they knew that for the tigers to get around the water and to get to them, it would take quite a lot of effort, and they'd easily get, you know, they'd easily get warned and manage to escape. But we were expecting arrowhead maybe, you know, after she got up from her slumber, because all tigers sleep in the afternoons, to find a way around the lake to our right hand side and sort of go around like that and stalk this spotted deer that were grazing close to us. But arrowhead started stalking in a direction completely different, and she started actually stalking towards the water. So we had no idea what she was stalking because we couldn't see anything in her line of sight. But she went on stalking into full stalk, and it was just beautiful watching her, you know, move. Just like, you know, almost glide as she stalked. And we were beginning to then wonder if she was stalking a turtle that might be basking on the river on the lake bank, because she is known to kill turtles. We have very large turtles called Indian soft-shelled turtles that can provide, you know, decent amount of meat for tiger. And she went on stalking and then straight into the water. So our first thought again was turtle. But then, you know, there was a huge amount of splashing and thrashing around in the water, and then arrowhead disappeared. She disappeared for a good 10 odd seconds, and I was shooting through a long lens, and suddenly I see that she, you know, as she got back, you know, she disappeared. She had disappeared underwater, and I was getting concerned after a point. And right then, I saw her pop back, you know, over the surface, and guess what? There was with her huge mother crocodile that was thrashing around with her. You know, she had done the unthinkable. She had actually stalked a crocodile, and that's what she had intended to kill. But it, you know, the hunt turned on its head very, very quickly, and you know, the crocodile was probably much bigger than she had expected it to be, and you know, it probably was a 12-footer. And as soon as she attacked the croc grabbed her by the neck and pulled her down underwater. And as soon as it did that, two other big crocs came right in, and you know, they all just got together and pulled down arrowhead underwater. And it was really, really scary. She literally managed to just somehow escape and just made it for land, running for her life. I've never seen a tiger run for its life the way we saw Arrowhead running, escaping from those crocs. See this picture? You see Arrowhead splashing out of the water and this huge croc. Look at the size of the head of that croc. It's bigger than the tiger's head. Uh, it's the croc itself is much bigger than the tiger. And see, you can see here how the croc is following the tiger with its jaws open, and the tiger just running for its life. And she managed to get back on Mother Earth, somehow escaping all of that. And I have never seen a tiger in a state of shock the way we saw Arrowhead after she got back on land. And she just crouched there, terrified, like a scared kitty. Those of you who have cats at home know how cats appear terrified and traumatized if they're really scared of something. And I've never seen a tiger that scared and that traumatized and in a state of shock the way Arrowhead was. She had absolutely not expected that to happen. She had expected to make a kill, and she nearly ended up becoming a kill herself. Now, these pictures probably do not do justice to the kind of action that happened that afternoon, with all of this happening. So I've got a really nice video that my guest Ramon had been really kind to share, and I shall show you that video. Watch very, very carefully.
कौन? नहीं हाँ थोड़ा आगे कर लो दिल्ली करो बॉस के साथ 1 सेकंड में वो छेद हो गया छिक वही तो बात थी यार.
She's underwater.
She's trying to oh
nearly drowned.
Tiger and crocodile.
That's when we realized it was crocs. And there she is running back for her life.
क्या पता मगरमच्छ से कोई फाइट हुई इसकी सर. हाँ वो आपने कहा सर. नहीं वो मिस हो गया.
Now, sightings like these are really, really once in a lifetime, and it's just amazing to see this kind of action happen right in front of you. And we get to see this kind of action on TV documentaries all the time, making it look as if they happen every day and you can watch it every day. And in fact, if you are on a trip like this and something like this happens on your first game drive, which it did on this particular trip, it's very difficult to understand or appreciate how rare or how difficult such sightings are, how once in a lifetime they are. That's why I say in wildlife, luck and chance have a huge role to play. For me, with so many years in the field, it was a first in life. For our drivers and guides in the park, they've spent their entire lifetime in that park, and for them it was a first in their lives. But for my guests, it was their first ever game drive in Tiger Country, and on their first drive, that's the kind of action they saw. So things like these happen, these amazing sightings happen, and it's very important to understand that they do not happen every day, that not every trip, not every game drive, not every expedition can provide you with action of that level, that scale. It's wildlife. Sometimes you have top class action like we just saw. Sometimes you have just apparently nothing happening for days on end. And therefore, it is very, very important to come into these trips with the right kind of mindset, a sporting spirit, as I said. Back in the day of hunting, trophy hunting especially, hunters used to refer to themselves as sportsmen. And, hunting was considered a game. And that's the reason why we still consider watching wildlife or finding wildlife or tracking wildlife a game. It's really not entirely in anybody's control. It's the wilderness, it's nature. Things happen. Sometimes they happen amazingly, sometimes they do not. There is action around every corner, but it might not always happen when you are there. So it is very, very important to understand and appreciate that for a lot of trips, you might have very distant sightings. You might have sightings where apparently nothing is happening, where a sleeping tiger just goes on sleeping and never wakes up and catches crocodiles or chases deer. But then again, every once in a while you have amazing action. The key to that is to have a sporting spirit and to understand that it's a matter of chance. Therefore, the more you do it, the more your chances are of coming across action like that. And with that, I would like to end today's webinar and move over to the Q&A session. But before that, I'd like to remind you that if you're interested in any of the tiger trips that we do in India, be it the Grand India Wildlife Adventure or India Tiger Quest that we just spoke about, or India Tiger Safari, which is a photo pro expedition, please find our website, phone number, and email ID at the bottom of this slide and get in touch.
Thank you so much, Aditya. You have some amazing stories and experiences to share. Thank you for bringing us along with you. We have some great questions already, but I just want to remind folks that they can submit questions via the questions field in the control panel. So you seem very familiar with the inhabitants, the locals in the area that you work in. How do you tell the tigers apart? What sort of markings give away their identities?
Well, individual tigers have individual markings. No two tigers have exactly the same stripes. But when we spend time with tigers, when we watch individual tigers over and over again over the years, you tend to be able to look at them and tell simply by their form, their shape, their faces, that this is this particular tiger or that particular tiger. For example, if you have 4 yellow labs at home, you can still tell them apart, right? They don't really look identical. Somebody will be rounder, somebody will be leaner, somebody will have a longer head, somebody will have a shorter muzzle. You can tell from their build and their faces, when you know animals as individuals, just like we do with people. We do check their stripe patterns, but only if there is a confusion or if we are in doubt. That's when we really look at pictures really closely. When we haven't had a clear sighting, then we look at pictures closely and compare stripe patterns. But by and large, when you become familiar with animals, individual animals over a period of years, because Riddhi, for example, is a tigress that I've seen as a cub. Even Arrowhead, for example, I've seen her since she was a young tigress, when she was just separating from her mother, before she herself became an adult independent tigress. So it's been several years, and when you know these animals as individuals over the years, you can just glimpse and tell that, okay, that's this tiger or that tiger. So yeah, it's just something that you get familiar with.
Hmm. So quick follow-up question. Are there ever identical twin tigers born, or just two or more in a litter?
They might look very similar. For example, even Arrowhead and her daughter Riddhi look very similar from a distance, but the stripe patterns are never identical.
Hmm. Okay, let's get back to the epic encounter between the crocodile and the tiger. Is that common for tigers to go after crocodiles? And following the encounter, do you know if she was badly injured? Were there any obvious signs of injury? Can you give us an update?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked the second question, especially. But yeah, to answer the first part of the question, it's not common, but Arrowhead's great grandmother, who was a tigress called Machli, she actually at one point was the most photographed tiger in the world. She is the star of many um, uh, uh, documentary films. Machli had actually mastered the art of hunting crocodiles. She could actually hunt large crocodiles, drag them to land, and then eat them. Arrowhead probably hasn't mastered that art yet, as we saw, and I hope she doesn't try to, because it's just too risky. You don't see that happening very often, but I presume tigers are opportunistic hunters, and familiarity, really helps in building their confidence and causing them to try out new things on the menu. So, because she spends a lot of time around the water, she's figured out that large turtles and crocs can be food. So that's probably why she's trying it. But I do not think tigers that are not familiar with crocodiles would ever go after them. And indeed, one does not see that happening very, very often. And yeah, second part of the question. So the very next afternoon, we found Arrowhead again in the adjoining area of Zone 3, Zone 4, and she was lying in tall grass. Um, we spent almost the entire afternoon with her. She was sleeping, and for a while she got up and sat. She was still visibly looking shaken and beaten from the attack on her the previous afternoon. And I looked with my binoculars and I took a few pictures as well. She had really bad jaw marks, puncture wounds that had also caused tears, because the croc had caught her neck here, and as she tried to pull herself away, she had managed to tear her skin here, right below the jaw, in a really difficult to lick area. And the wound had, the skin around the wound had turned black. It had been exactly 24 hours when since the attack, when we saw her the next afternoon, and the wound had turned black. So I was quite concerned because crocs live in the water, they eat rotting things. There are all kinds of bacteria in their jaws, and I was really concerned that the wound might get infected. And I saw her trying to lick it, but she was really struggling because it was right here, right below the jaw. So she wasn't being able to reach the area with her tongue. So I did send her pictures to the park management, and they started to monitor her. Luckily, we saw her the very next morning, which is when actually I took this picture. She was trying to hunt, um, and she seemed to be, much better than the previous afternoon. You don't see the injury in this picture, because the injury was on her right hand side. This is her left hand side. Um, but the previous afternoon, I was really concerned because we know she needed to hunt. We know she had been hungry. And as she was laying down in the grass, injured from that hunt, a herd of deer actually walked onto her, but she did absolutely nothing to try and hunt them. They practically stepped onto her before they realized there was a tiger, and then they scattered. But she didn't as much as even look at them. So she did seem to be in a lot of pain and shock. But the next morning, we were delighted to see her trying to hunt again. So that was quite a relief.
Mm. So I think we have time for one last follow-up question. If the rangers, or if you had determined that she was really in grave danger, would
Mhm.
park rangers step in and treat her? Or what's the policy there?
Well, technically, the policy is to let nature take her course, but um, obviously, there is both concern and sentiment attached to these animals, because of course it's partly anthropomorphism, which is not a good thing, but also partly the concern that these animals are really, really precious. They are still endangered. Breeding tigress is a really valuable animal for the future of the species. So, what they would have done had the wound gotten worse is that they would have tranquilized her, injected antibiotics, dressed the wound with anti-maggot sprays and things like that, and then let her go. And usually that would have taken care of the wound and healed it. But fortunately, in this case, that was not necessary. Uh, the wound seemed to have started healing quite well by itself. These animals have really nice, strong immunity.
Mm. Well, that's the last question we have time for today. So I will turn it back to you for closing comments.
Thank you, Sunny, and thank you, everyone. I really hope you enjoyed listening to these super exciting wildlife sightings that I wanted to share with you. I look forward to seeing you all again really soon on Daily Dose of Nature. Thank you.
Thank you again for presenting, Aditya. It's always a pleasure, and I'm so thrilled for you that you had such an amazing season, and excited for those who will join you again in the future. I want to thank you all for tuning in. Please join us again tomorrow for our next Daily Dose of Nature. You can check out this week's lineup, including registration links, on our website at nathab.com/webinars. We did record today's presentation, and we will have the replay available on our website soon. With that, I'll conclude the webinar. Have a wonderful day, everyone.